Hey there, this is Ben from ExploreInformed with a travel news roundup for the month of June 2019. We will talk about the new Cuban travel restrictions, a trend emerging in the Dominican Republic, and talk through a few interesting headlines, like one from Taco Bell. Yes, that Taco Bell. Welcome to a travel news roundup from ExploreInformed. Let's jump right in. Back in April, John Bolton, President Trump's national security advisor, warned that new limits are going to be issued on travel to Cuba by U.S. citizens, but the administration did not provide any details on what those limits were going to be. But in early June of this year, the administration formally announced the new restrictions, which put an abrupt end to people-to-people trips, which is how many people have traveled to Cuba over the last year or two. The Trump administration announced the restrictions with pretty much immediate effect. The restrictions were announced on Tuesday, June 4th, with the educational and cultural trips commonly operated under the people-to-people provision no longer permitted starting the very next day, Wednesday, June 5th. And as a result, that Wednesday, the three largest cruise lines in the U.S., Royal Caribbean, Norwegian, and Carnival, all announced that they would no longer sail to Cuba, taking the collective wind out of the sails for nearly 800,000 cruise bookings, either already scheduled or underway, according to an industry trade group, the Cruise Lines International Association, as quoted in the New York Times. In fact, cruises have become the most popular way to visit Cuba since 2016. And according to the Times, over 140,000 Americans visited Cuba on a cruise ship in the first 4 months of this year. So given the current cadence of the visits and the 800,000 bookings already made, there are likely millions of Americans whose travel plans have now been severely disrupted. Cruise lines have had to adapt their itineraries immediately to exclude any Cuba stops and compensate travelers for the associated disruption. So if you are one of those impacted, I am sorry. Seriously, that is a real bummer. Now, travel to Cuba is not forbidden altogether. Many of the other historical reasons for travel are still permissible. One of those exceptions is the support for the Cuban people provision, within which individuals can travel to Cuba if they have an itinerary that includes interactions and investment in the local economy, such as meeting with business owners and artists. And visitors must also participate in local activities and stay in a private home instead of a hotel. Some of the smaller tour operators who have been operating in Cuba for a long time will adapt, as they likely have with each new presidential administration and their accompanying Cuba policy. So there will still be options to get to Cuba. A somewhat frightening trend is emerging in the Dominican Republic, as over the last year, several American tourists have died while vacationing there, and some news agencies are reporting that total is as high as 11 or 12 individuals in the last year. Now, there has not been any identified link between the deaths, nor is a single cause likely to be found, but it certainly feels a little bit strange given some of the details of these stories and some of the similarities between them. 4 of the deaths have occurred at the same hotel, the Hard Rock Hotel and Casino in Punta Cana, which as a result has apparently decided to remove all the minibars from their guest rooms. And 2 of those deaths were an engaged couple visiting together, and they were both found dead in the room after they missed their checkout time. Also, at least 3 of the other deaths appear to have taken place at hotels within the same chain, the Bahia Principe. Forgive me if I just butchered that. But those in authority are starting to take note of this recent activity. According to the New York Times, the FBI is reportedly in country with a small team to help investigate and offer support to the Dominican authorities as they dig deeper. Even a U.S. congressman has gotten into the mix, calling on the State Department and the FBI to investigate and also reassess the current travel advisories for the DR. Now, as expected, the tourism officials in the DR have spoken out to try to minimize any concerns, and according to the USA Today, have continued to press that the DR is safe, that there are no mysterious deaths going on, and note that in fact the current cadence of deaths is frankly not out of the ordinary, even though it feels a little bit insincere to say that. The authorities have told USA Today that in both 2011 and 2015, 15 tourists had died in country through June of that year. Now, I never thought I'd be talking about death trends in tourism, but there you go. And it seems for now that the State Department tends to agree. They have not deemed this trend out of the ordinary per se, at least enough to change the travel advisory level for the DR. Within their 4-tier travel advisory system, the DR remains at level 2, which is second from the top. They recommend visitors exercise increased caution, but don't suggest reconsidering plans or canceling plans altogether. In fact, more than 50 countries share that same risk rating, including Mexico and several very popular tourist destinations in Europe, like Spain and France. So while this is something to be aware of, don't change any of your plans. Just do your research, your homework, and continue safe travel practices. Now, let's spin through a few aviation-related headlines. Apparently, President Trump believes Air Force One needs a rebrand and has proposed it receive a new paint job. President Trump believes the current baby blue doesn't fit, and the current scheme from the Kennedy era isn't patriotic enough. The problem is his new proposed design, which features a darker blue and a red stripe, looks somewhat familiar and frankly is rather uninspiring. Also, the new design ignores some of the strategic considerations of the current design. The light blue belly of the plane makes it harder to see while cruising high in the sky, which is obviously important for security purposes. And a dark blue belly will be much easier to detect visually. Congress is planning to slow down any design changes and hopes to require congressional approval before any major changes can take place. International airlines around the world will be rerouting flights to avoid flying over the Strait of Hormuz near Iran as tensions escalate with the US. Iran shot down a US military surveillance drone recently, which was flying as high as modern airliners do. And as a result, many major airlines such as Qantas, British Airways, KLM, and Lufthansa have said they will be avoiding the region, according to USA Today. Around that same time, a Dutch-led joint investigation team announced that 4 individuals have been formally charged with shooting down Malaysian Airlines Flight 17, leading to the death of 298 passengers and crew back in 2014. Those 4 individuals include 3 Russians and a Ukrainian, and investigators believe they are ultimately responsible for shooting down the commercial jet with an anti-aircraft system belonging to Russia during that conflict with eastern Ukraine. This is why airlines try to avoid flyovers of hostile areas, as many are doing today over southern Iran. Now, to completely change gears from aviation, reservations open at 10 a.m. on June 27th at Taco Bell's pop-up hotel. Yes, you heard that right. Taco Bell's pop-up hotel, aptly named The Bell, is coming to Palm Springs for 1 week in August, from August 8th to the 12th, with room rates starting at $169 per night. Taco Bell room service will be available for breakfast, classic favorites will be available poolside, and exclusive menu items will be featured. So get on that if Taco Bell is your thing. But that is all for our first news roundup. If you have a story to share, feel free to hit us up on social media and maybe we can discuss that on our next video. I have dropped some links down below in the descriptions to the stories we have talked about today. And as this was our first time doing a news roundup, please let me know how you liked it. I really do appreciate any and all feedback. As usual, you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at ExploreInformed. Hit the subscribe button down here if you want to catch more of our future content. Otherwise, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.